Well, thank you very much. I hope it'll be a few words and then I can save you from a lot of boredom. But can I share first in the acknowledgement of country and pay my respects to our Indigenous forebears, past and present, and to their heirs and successors. It's always a pleasure to be here, Consul General. Delighted to be with you again. To your many distinguished guests, particularly those who come from abroad, welcome. And for me, I was invited to come today and to, I thought, comment on one of the books. I was told by Dr Chaturvedi that she was presenting this book to me to read before I came. It was to help with my education. And it reminded me, I might say, of the first visit I paid to India, about which you have all heard before, because it was the time in which I met Indira Gandhi. People are looking at me. And you know what she said, don't you? She asked me, "How long are you here for?" And I said, 9 days. And she said, "That's good. Most come for 2 and then think they can write a book." Well, I have looked at Dr Chaturvedi's book, and I must say it was extraordinarily insightful. Because what it does is it tells you so much about the history of India. It tells you so much about the way in which it is today a modern advanced economy. But it says a lot about its past and its history. It says a lot about its various religions. And that's just to show you that I've been looking at the book. But for me, it was particularly fascinating because I looked through some of the chapters dealing with architecture, and I thought, well, I have seen Amritsar and the Golden Temple. I have seen the Red Fort in Delhi. I couldn't find a picture of the Taj Mahal. I thought that was interesting. I was particularly interested in its discussion about religion. And the point that it was making was that there were 4 major religions. Very interesting, I thought. Obviously the Hindus, and then it talked about the Muslims, it talked about the Sikhs, and it talked about the Jains. Now I must say, when I first went there, the Clerk of the Parliament was a Mr Jain, and that led me to a view that the Jains have a role. But I looked through the book and I can't find a discussion on the Jains. So somebody's going to have to educate me, because I've never seen a Jain temple. I assume there are some of it. So my education has been lacking. I look forward always to learning more about India every day. But the purpose of my speaking to you today is really to say a little about this in the context of Australia. Because the Consul General has made it, I think, very clear. We invite people to come and settle in Australia. We want them to be Australian. And I tell people frequently, and I'll be doing it this week at a citizenship ceremony, that 1/4 of Australians are overseas born, but if you add those who have one parent overseas born and being overseas born, it's more than 50% of Australia. And there are only 2 countries in the world who have a greater proportion of their population overseas born than Australia. And they're not the countries you think about. They include Israel, and for the tax arrangements, I tell everybody, Luxembourg. And people look at me and they say, "Oh no, but if you go to some of those Middle Eastern countries, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar, you find that they have a very significant proportion of their population overseas born, but they are not welcomed and made citizens of those countries." They are there temporarily. What we seek to do is to encourage people to make a commitment to our core values, parliamentary democracy and the rule of law. But we recognise that people have come to Australia from all over the world, of different cultures, different religions, different races. And we ask that people do not forget where you're from. And we encourage you to keep an awareness of it, and to educate your children, and to bring other people to a knowledge. And so I look at Dr Chaturvedi's book and I say, this is enlightening to share with other Australians so much of India. And for me, it confirms in my mind what an extraordinary and very special place Australia is. And so I'm delighted to be here. I'll participate in whatever way you want, but I was given, as you can see, an autographed copy, and I found it fascinating reading. They didn't send me the other two. I think they're Hindu and Punjabi. I'm not as literate in reading them, but I'll look forward to an examination of them by those who make presentations later. Thank you very much.